Good morning, Cerebral NFL fans. This is Stephen Hyder, Gay City Sports Media Company. It is Thursday, January 20th, my bad, guys, 2022. And we had a pretty big, important meeting yesterday. The end of season press conference took place, otherwise known as, why is the head coach a part of this? It makes no sense. There was a couple things I want to get into about that press conference that might go underserved, right? I mean, everyone's going to kind of focus in on Jalen Hurts, situation, the things that got said with the wide receivers, because I mean, there were some hot takes given by our general manager there and our coach. So I understand the focus being there, and I even put out a video about what I thought he said about the quarterback position yesterday. But what I want to focus on is that there was this kind of looming question, right, that Howie Roseman said about building the team still, right? He talked about this idea that, in his opinion, Howie Roseman's opinion, this team is not outside of a building mode until it has basically like a bye week or home field advantage in the playoffs. So basically either the 1 or 2 seed, which I think there's multiple ways of looking at something like this, ladies and gentlemen. I think the first way of looking at it is to say it's kind of a good thing, Steve, because basically what we're seeing here is that they're not necessarily being fooled, but by making the playoffs this year against a last place schedule. They know that the schedule coming up this year is going to be tougher. Now you're playing a second place schedule. You might not have exactly the same results if you're throwing the same product on the field. The product's got to get better on the field. So, and I think that's a fair way of looking at it, guys. And I would tend to agree with that perspective that at least we see some recognition from the front office that this ain't good enough yet, that there's still some growth that has to happen on this football team. You have to put more talent on it. And I think you can look at it from like going right into Jimmy Kimsky's question. I think it was Kimsky. They just said Jimmy. You know how it is on these press conferences. It's hard to tell who it is. But Jimmy, they asked the question to Jimmy, and he's talking about draft capital, and he was talking about an elite quarterback. I mean, we all caught what was in between the lines there. He was talking about, might you move up in the draft to target a quarterback, or might you package some of these picks and go after one of the big names, that one of the white elephants, if you will, out there in terms of the quarterback class that's potentially could be available. No one knows if these dudes are available or not, to be honest. I thought Howie kind of came into this question and talked about like right player, right cost kind of evaluation here, right? Basically saying like, you need good players around the team. And I thought he did a weird way of kind of angling this to where you don't know if he's talking about quarterbacks or if he's just talking about the general construction of the roster. This was the second question of the entire, end of season press conference. If you guys want to go back and re-listen to what he said, but he said, you got to evaluate our team. You're always looking to build. And he talked about, the playoffs are kind of a good thing and you need good players to make the playoffs. You get what I'm saying? So like, to me, it just seemed like he was not ruling out trading for players, which, for Howie Roseman is right up his sleeve. I mean, trades are kind of his strength as a GM, in my opinion. So it's an interesting way of looking at this, right? I mean, he's really talking about the right player at the right cost to basically increase the talent level of this football team. You can take that multiple ways, guys. I mean, I understand that there are people that are running with that saying like, Gate, he's talking about he's not ruling out trading for one of those quarterbacks. And it's like, yeah, I can understand why you're saying that. But I also felt like he might have been swinging that conversation a little bit more into the overall talent perspective of the roster and talking about, I'm not ruling out as the general manager of this team, potentially trading for other players, other position groups around the quarterback to improve the team. I think there was two separate ways that you could potentially look at that from the way he answered that question. And then I thought I think it was Mike Garafolo. I don't know how you say his name. I think it was his question. And that was like the fourth question or so in there. And he talked about the philosophy of the draft and Howie Roseman, right? You have a top 16 pick. You got 2 top 16 picks. And, he talked about like, simply put, like, does your draft philosophy change, right? You have linebackers, cornerbacks, safeties, all these things that are kind of needed. But should our fan base even concern ourselves with those positions, right? Should we concern ourselves with a position group that has not been drafted since 1979 at linebacker? We just don't really draft safeties very high in the draft. I can't remember the last time we took a safety in the first round, guys. I honestly don't know that off the top of my head. We have ventured a few times in the corners. We have taken some cornerbacks within the last 20 so years inside the first round. And then how he talked about, like, they have a core philosophy and a core belief about how you build a football team, which seems to me as if, I don't know if he's insinuating like guys don't expect change or just trying to defend himself and saying like, hey guys, building the offensive defensive line has worked for us over the past 20 some years. He said, they're committed to the way that they build teams, was Howie's response, that they're, look, we have a philosophy, we have a core philosophy. I think he was defending himself, saying it's been very successful, and that, like, to be honest, we're committed to our philosophy and our belief system about how you build football teams. But he also added a caveat here where he said, we don't go in saying we won't draft a player. I mean, that was an interesting take to end of it. Like, okay, yeah, we have this core philosophy, we have this core belief, but we're also not saying in the same breath here that we might not alter that depending upon the actual talent level of the player that's in front of us. And I do think you have to wonder, because like these dudes aren't blind, right? They see these guys that get drafted that normally wouldn't have this kind of value, right? Micah Parsons wasn't on our board because of the position, right? I mean, let's just be honest. If Micah Parsons was a hands in the dirt 5 technique, he's probably much higher on the Eagles draft board last year, right? I'm not saying that they would have made that pick, because I think that you can't go back and you can't change it. And who knows, right? But I definitely think it would have elevated him on the draft board. So I kind of look at it like, do you see guys like Micah Parsons and these dudes that had success? And, front offices pay attention to that kind of stuff. Do they look at these guys and say to themselves, like, that's not a Micah Parsons, but this dude's impactful enough to actually make a difference? I mean, it's interesting, right? John McMullen followed right up behind him on that question. I thought, and I'm trying to stick to this theme for a reason, guys. He asked him about the change of philosophy on building both sides of the football, right? And I thought that this was particular to the coaching the coaching staff, and then like the systems that are run by both, coaches here. And I thought Howie kind of tiptoed around it, but I thought that there was some merit to what he was saying here, which is he talked about fit and vision. What's the fit? What's the vision of the scheme, right? Like, some of this has to do with the coaches telling us and describing to us the need and the necessity of a certain player to the system. And then we need to make sure that there's an actual fit inside the draft class for that vision to take place. If I'm reading it correctly, and you can't read this stuff too much, guys, you know that they're jockeying for position on stuff. So you always got to be a little careful. Don't get caught up in the fool's gold, if you will. But he talks about like communication and vision from the coaching staff. And, basically how does the guy fit, which would lead me to believe that if the coaching staff comes to them and they say that this person, this position group is of the utmost importance to effectively establishing ourselves and having the improvement, they're not going to remove a guy off the board no matter what the draft history says. That's what it sounds like. Like I said, be careful, fool's gold. Howie and these guys know what they're doing to an extent here. They're giving you only as much information as they want to give to us. You know what I mean? Like they got their objectives that they're trying to achieve here. And then I think it was Berman came in and asked the question about run versus pass ratio, which kind of sticks to this theme, right? So we've been talking about how to use draft capital, how to construct the roster, all this type of stuff, and then we kind of get this secondary question that's not directly related to what we've been talking about today, but it is indirectly related, which is, you said you're sticking with your quarterback for the most part here in what your responses have been. You said that you have a core draft philosophy. You do believe in the success and the results you've had by sticking to that philosophy. But in the same right, you said that you want one style of play, but this team is better suited for a completely separate style of play. And I think Berman talked about, like, are you more amendable to being a run-centered team? And, like, how does that affect roster construction, basically? And I think this was somewhere around the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th, 6th, 7th, about 8th question that was asked in the press conference, guys. And he says, how he goes into this thing where he just basically says, look, you try to win as many games as possible. He's like, look, at the end of the day, I'm not out here to look fancy throwing the football. You got to win football games. Now, I do think that if you read between the lines, there's still clearly a core belief that you have to have the ability to throw the ball in today's NFL in order to win games. Now, I do think there's a balance, right? I mean, I think some people take things out of context, like, oh, you got to have a dude that can throw the ball 40 times a game. I don't buy into that. But you do have to have a guy that if a team like Tampa Bay sells out in the box and puts 8 in the box, you have to be able to beat that through the passing game. You got to have a guy who's good enough to beat that on 25 to 35 throws, right? I thought they got a little out of control with the 43 throws they threw in that game, but I also think that Tampa Bay completely sold out to stop that. And I think that's what Berman was alluding to. Like, okay, like, does the results of this game change you? because there could be potentially, arguably, there's the argument that the blueprint is out there now that you got to load the box up, sell it out to stop this running game. You have to make sure you're not just +1, you're +2 against the Eagles in the running game, and then live and die by if your secondary can stop Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert and Quez Watkins and Jalen Hurts. And I think that, if you read a little bit into it, I mean, these guys are always kind of jockeying for position here a little bit. But he talked about like how Coach Sirianni, when he came in for the interview, talked about fitting, the personnel for the scheme. Like, look, you got to alter your scheme to fit personnel. And he said, look, I thought he did a good job with that, with fitting to personnel. I still think that, there's some underlying things going on here. And I was a little disappointed if you look at this from the perspective of, you said you're going to keep your quarterback. We know your quarterback has got to work on playing in rhythm with the offense, right? Jalen Hurts has gotten a lot better playing on time with the offense, right? On time just being basically guys not immediately eluding the pocket. I mean, he's still got some issues there. I'm not saying it's perfect, but he's a far better product on the field right now than what it was back in 2020, because the Dallas game really opened up eyes to some of the issues that was going on with Jalen Hurts back in 2020. And he was a lot better at that in 2021. But when you talk about in rhythm, guys, this is that aspect I told you guys about hitting your rhythm step. When you're a progression read quarterback, you're in a rhythm step, 1, 3, 5, 7 steps, whatever your drop back is. When you hit that step, the ball has to be out of your hands if your first progression is deemed to be open. And mind you, open in the NFL does not mean what it means in college, and it does not mean what it means in high school. Because you can see when quarterbacks are waiting to see a guy get open, they're still in that mindset from previous, levels of competition. In the NFL, you have to judge it by the leverage of the coverage and the leverage of the defender that's on the player that is your first read in the progression, right? That's what it means to throw a guy open. They're not really open quite yet, but you have to judge it from knowing your player, knowing your guy, syncing your footwork to that receiver's route, and then that progression has to be there. If it's not there, that's when you have to gather yourself, right? That's when you're hitching and gathering, going to the second read. Second read's not there, then you're going and resetting your feet and going to the third read. So I was a little disappointed when they got around to that aspect of things, just judging where they talked about the draft picks and they talked about your core philosophy. And I honestly feel like one of the things the Eagles have got to get better on is the quarterback's got to play better in rhythm. And these receivers they've got to win. They got to win against press. You have to find ways of winning versus press. That's why I was really, really not happy about the answer that was given from, I think Martin asked the question. And it was really evaluating the growth and the need of a free agent. And they were kind of talking about the wide receiver core here. And the explanation came, Nick Sirianni kind of came in and says, he feels good about the wide receiver core. He said some very complimentary things about Devontae Smith. He said Devontae Smith is a number 1 wide receiver, right? He said this guy is as good as you're going to find in the league. That's great. That's a great compliment. Whatever it is, I do think there's elements of truth to what he's saying. He said, Quez Watkins has big-time speed. He talked about Quez deserves more touches, and he's got big playability. He called him the number 2 wide receiver. The part that bothered me was when they got over to Jalen Reagor as the number 3 spot. I'm not trying to kill Jalen Reagor, guys. I was as big on Jalen Reagor as anybody who's made videos. With that said, there's a point to where a guy has to earn his way back on the field. And I'm not in favor of that young man being third up in the lineup right now. I think that young man needs to work his way back onto the football field, me personally. So I'm a little put off to that answer from the coach. Now, mind you, I don't think that they're in an area where they're going to quite, like, I don't think they're in an area yet where we have to worry too much about it. You get what I'm saying? Like, they haven't really sat down and evaluated film yet, guys, as a coaching staff to really grade out the players and what they feel about going forward into 2022. That stuff can drastically change once you're sitting down there analyzing 8 to 10 game windows at a time. You know what I mean? When you're really digging in, you're really looking at stuff like that. It can really change the course of how you view things, to be quite honest. I thought there was a couple of like really just crazy things that were put in here. Chris Murray ended it by talking about, Jalen Hurts is, what's going on with his accuracy. Nick Sirianni, I thought I appreciated it being here and talking about what I've been talking about, which is in rhythm. I mean, Nick basically repeated almost word for word what I told you guys. We use the same example, which I told you, go to any publication. And when you talk about playing in rhythm and you talk about progression reads, it's always going to be that curls to the outside and to the flats in your last progression. That's what everybody always talks about. It's what it is. That's the go-to example. And he talked about it. He said feet, finish. That's what he's talking about, guys. He's talking about making sure that you're playing in rhythm and you're hitting that rhythm step correctly. That's what he's referring to. And all these things are kind of, wonderfully blended together, guys. And there has to be improvement. I'm going to tell you, there has to be improvement here. I'm with Jalen taking the snaps if that's the direction that the Philadelphia Eagles go. I've said that from the jump, but there has to be a lot of improvement when it comes to playing in rhythm with this offense in 2022, because that's really, to me, the most important step that has to happen going forward. All right, guys, I appreciate y'all listening in on this. Let me get the comments. Let's look over some comments and let's talk, guys. What's up, Cree? How you doing, buddy? He said Eagles Nation. What's good, buddy? Stuart, how you doing, man? He said, so if we lose defensive coordinator Jonathan Gannon, who do we get to replace him? I'm hoping that the Giants eventually let go of Patrick Graham. I'm a big fan of Patrick Graham out there with the Giants. I think he was the only coach on their coaching staff that was worth a crap, to be quite honest. I think if you give that guy actual playmakers on defense, he could really build you something special. Easy answer here is Mike. It's Mike Zimmer, Stuart, to be honest, because, Mike Zimmer is a guy that has experience running a very similar concept here. Jonathan Gannon comes from his coaching tree, you know what I mean? So obviously there's some influences of Mike Eberflus, or I don't know if it's Eberflus's influence, I should say, over Jonathan Gannon. But for the most part, you're kind of plugging and coaching there. And then Vic Fangio, I think, is a brilliant defensive mind, Stuart. I mean, we went over this. I thought Vic Fangio is like one of those guys that if you know about Vic Fangio, right? He's just one of those dudes that's special at that level of things. Jamel said, what's up, Gate? How you doing, buddy? Thank you guys for tuning in this morning, guys. Drew, what's good, man? How are you doing today? What's up, Natira? He said, yesterday proved we won't be taking a linebacker in the first with the way Howie talked about their team building. I thought at times he kind of talked himself in circles a little bit, though, Natiro. You know what I mean? Like he kind of definitely talked about like, hey, we got a philosophy. It's worked for us. But then he kind of talked about like, well, it's also dependent upon like the arguments that the coaching staff presents to us and tells us the importance of the player. And can we find a guy to fit the value? But yes, I don't think I'd put money on it, Natiro. It's been since 79. I don't think I'd put my money. I don't think I'd waste $20 on a bet like that. You know what I mean? What's up, Dante? Good morning, man. Vester Lettuce Toke. What's good, buddy? How you doing? Cree said, don't all the quarterbacks, Rodgers, Watson, Wilson, that fans want the Eagles to trade for have the rights to refuse a trade? I think they do, to be honest, Cree. And that is definitely going to be part of the situation here, is trying to essentially discern, are any of these dudes even remotely interested in coming to Philadelphia? It's going to probably be a hard sell, man. I mean, I guess it's all about the way you spin the conversation, right, Cree? How do you spin the conversation? Are you spinning it as like, look, dude, we got a guy that's on the cusp of 1,000 yards and Devontae Smith as a rookie. We got one of the top 10 tight ends in the league in Dallas Goedert. And, we got an up-and-coming number 2 in Quez Watkins, who's big play explosive. It's all about the way you spin that. We got one of the best offensive lines. It's all in the spin. But some of these dudes are very intelligent. They're no dummies. They know. Cree said people are still talking about trading for Deshaun Watson. Who states that he doesn't want to? Who states that he doesn't want to come here? I think even with Deshaun Watson, you can't separate the legal aspect of things, Cree. I don't think you can remove the legal aspect of everything. Like when you're talking about Deshaun Watson, like I mean that's all in theory until that thing gets cleaned up, and that's a lot to clear up. Let's just be honest. He's got a lot he's got to clear up. Dante said, I came feeling like he has full intentions of using all 3 picks unless he gets a great offer. He's brilliant in the draft positioning, but Howie core belief is line first. Yeah, I agree with exactly what you're saying there, Dante. I will say that I think that there was one point, and I don't remember the exact person who asked the question, but he did talk about maneuvering up and down in the draft. He did talk about that, like leveraging for 2023 or moving up or moving down in 2022 to fit the need. I mean, he kind of alluded that they might do some maneuvering there, but yeah, I mean, I definitely agree that you always have to suspect offense or defensive line first and then kind of everything else later. It's going to feel weird when we get back to 1 draft pick. Yeah. We have to be very focused on our targets, right? What's up, Blaze Tailed? How you doing, buddy? Natiro said, Gate, I remember Broncos were also focusing on run defense plus many blitzes, and Hurts was better against them. I don't know what happened last game, but he lost all progress he made. It wasn't quite the same, though. The level of aggressiveness, Natiro, wasn't quite the same. I did a video where I broke down all the pressures, and I talked about like which teams pressured him the most. Denver wasn't passive in its game plan against them, Natiro, but nowhere near to like what Tampa had done. This is the second time Tampa completely sold out on the blitz, man. I mean, Tampa was they weren't just bringing one extra guy in the box. You know what I mean? Like they were completely bringing their defense in the box and just saying, we're going to play single high and then either play zone and cover 3 or we're going to man up on you and cover 1 and you're going to have to beat us. And that's something they're going to have to get better. And that has to do with playing in rhythm. That's all about playing in rhythm with the offense, to be honest. Jamal said, we need to draft some bad, you know what, on defenses. Nobody fears us anymore. Hopefully we do this time around. Yeah, I agree. I agree that the defense needs an infusion of talent, and it would be nice to have tone centers. I don't know how it fits in today's game, though, Jamal. You know how it is. Like, it's definitely a different football game from, 15, 20 years ago. Hard to say how those dudes fit anymore, but we definitely need guys that can play with a little bit of an attitude on the field, but keep it under control. What's up, Russell? He said, I wouldn't read too much into that. Nick seems like the guy who's always going to big ups his guys publicly. I'm sure he knows he needs another receiver. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily like the public thing to that, Russell, but I do think that there's an element of truth to saying that he hasn't even really watched the film yet to analyze the season. And you're going to change your opinion once you can really see and evaluate each player against each type of coverage, each type of leverage played against them, the concepts. You're going to chart that kind of stuff. And they're going to have a lot of eyes doing that. And it's not like one dude does it. You know what I mean? They have like several dudes charting this stuff. Once they have a more complete analysis of the players, I got a feeling things are going to drastically change. Saison said, I think Nick saying Jalen is the third was him being nice about the situation. Cree said, I could be wrong, but I think the Eagles need to address all 3 levels of their defense: edge rusher, stud linebacker, cornerback, and safety. Yeah, I think that they need help along the D-line. They definitely need a key playmaker at linebacker, and we need a safety. I mean, it's quite obvious we need a playmaking safety. Dante said, we have the best beat writers in the game. KS the Filthy said, I'm more excited about the free agents we're going to bring in. What's up, Blaze? How you doing, man? Blue City, we are not letting go. Bro, don't be trying to destroy my hopes and dreams here, Blue City. If you haven't noticed yet, Blue City, Gate City is in full endorsement of taking Patrick Graham from the Giants. If you guys decide that you're not retaining Patrick Graham once you hire your head coach, and he says he wants his own guy there, I'm in full support of bringing him into Philadelphia. Sam Shady said, do you think we try to retain Greg Ward Jr., or is he the odd man out who opens up a roster spot for a veteran free agent? Also, do you believe we utilize him correctly? Utilize him correctly, arguably. I would say that we underutilize him. He probably should have played a lot more snaps on the season. I mean, he's a slot guy. You know what I mean? He's a slot guy that can give you, 12 personnel that can play outside for you. He's kind of that dependable guy, like a Jason Avant type. I don't think he's quite the same frame as Avant. I'm not calling him that, but he's that type of player to where he's a chain mover, right? He's a guy that you look to on your third downs. You try to identify that guy. You know that guy's going to be where he's supposed to be. You know he's got dependable hands. You get the football into him. But, yeah, I mean, I get your point, Sam. Like, I think they underutilized him a lot. B. Philly says, I don't think Howie's as bad as people think. He needs to get away from running the draft and let the scouts do their job. But if you take all the things a GM does, Howie's done a good job. Yeah, it's a little hit or miss with Howie Roseman. I agree, B. Philly. It's complex. I will say that, anytime you draft a guy, it's not one dude making that decision, to be quite honest. But I think where Howie has to get better is that when there have been internal debates between, analytics, the scouting department, the coaching department, he doesn't always choose he's not always choosing the right group of people to go with. Natiro said, he said trading back and getting picks next year depends on the value we get. So there's a chance we select all 3 picks if we don't get good offers. Yeah, I mean, I think that's always a potential possibility. There's also the possibility that he doesn't trade back to 2023. He could be trading back to 2022. You know what I mean? He could be packaging and moving forward. You know what I mean? I think he left himself open to the possibility of being able to do anything he wanted, to be honest. Bobby said, when Howie was asked about drafting a linebacker in the first round because they haven't since '79, Howie's answer, we believe in our philosophy, which means no, we're not drafting a linebacker in the first round. Blue City said, the only way that happens, Patrick Graham would have to want to come to you guys. I don't think it's a matter of him having to want to come to us. I think it's a matter of your head coach, whoever the new head coach becomes. He's going to have the opportunity more than likely to pick his staff when it comes to the defensive coordinator and stuff like that. Now, it might be just a situation like the Eagles had with Jeff Stoutland, where any person is going to want to play with Jeff Stoutland. They're going to want to coach with Jeff Stoutland, I should say. It might be one of those situations with Patrick Graham as well, to where any legitimate head coach is going to look at Patrick Graham and say, like, yeah, man, that dude's as good a defensive coordinator as anyone there is. But sometimes these dudes have relationships, man. You can never rule it out, Blue City. And if that happens, I would certainly be interested in adding Patrick Graham here in Philadelphia. Joshua said, if we draft an edge rusher in the first, do you start him and have Graham in the Chris Long role to start Graham or start Graham? It depends on like the development of the player that you have, Joshua. Like, where is he at in terms of that? Like, how ready is he to be on an NFL field? I think that no matter who it is, you're going to reduce the role of Brandon Graham a little bit. You're going to try to take some snaps off of 33, 34-year-old player. With that said, you're probably still going to see Graham start because, unless – look, I'm saying that, Joshua, but the other side of this is I can't exactly predict where he is coming off the injury. That's the difficult aspect of this to predict. But if he's back and he's good coming off the injury at the age that he's at, he'd probably start with a reduction. I would imagine some reduction in snaps. I don't think that they're going to be using him the way they used to where he's playing like 90% of the snaps, 85% of the snaps. I would think that that's going to tick down as he gets a little older. To me, I guess, Joshua, the way I look at it is it really doesn't matter who takes the first snap on the field. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of just divvied up by the role you have and how many snaps you gain throughout the course of a game. Cree said, I would like for the Eagles to select an occasional diamond in the rough, like a Trent Cole. They do that. They definitely like trying to take those selections, but I think it's the appropriate value where you do it. You start getting into the fifth round and stuff like that, then yeah, that's where I think you take those kind of long shots on people. Dante said, of course, Rager is third. There's nothing behind him. We need a lot of help at the wide receiver plus all three levels of defense. No faith in JJ, huh, Dante? No, I hear what you're saying. It's legit that there's really no one here to really push him. Even Greg Ward Jr. is technically a free agent. So, yeah. It's not only drafting how he messed up our cap space with many bad choices. I don't know if I'd say they were bad choices, Natira. I mean, he was trying to chase the Super Bowl window, right? I mean, he was trying to get guys to chase that Super Bowl window. In hindsight, Natira, I mean, you can't predict that those dudes are going to get injured the way they got injured. You know what I mean? And then it's not like Alshon Jeffrey had a major injury concern. Alshon really burnt us more so with the fact that he just wasn't on the field. Even going back to 2018, you remember, Natiro, he started the season off injured with the shoulder. He didn't play. And then you go to 2019 and he gets hampered early on in the season, starts missing a ton of games, and it ends up, basically completely missing games. Fast forward to 2020 and then everything kind of happened the way it happened, Bobby said, I think we draft offensive line and defensive line in the first and trade the other first for 2023 pick. It's possible, Bobby. It's very possible they do something like that. Dante said, I wouldn't rule out drafting a linebacker in the first round. He said last year it's rare to find yourself in the situation of picking 6. So I think with the extra picks, it's a possibility. Sasan said, please don't mention Jason Avant's wishy-washy. Man was talking nonsense in the Inside the Birds pod. Your hands down a better analysis of a quarterback than he is trust. Well, I mean, he's not a quarterback coach. You know what I mean? Like, he's not a quarterback. He's a receiver, to be fair to him. You know what I mean? I would say that Jason Avant there's some things he says that are truthful. And there's other things where, he's, you're doing the best you can with the intel that's given to you. You know what I mean? We got to remember that Jason Avant had access to the players the year prior. So he does have some internal knowledge that we don't have about some of these guys in terms of their behaviors, their attitudes, their work, their preparation, maturity, all that stuff. He's got access to that stuff that, we didn't really have. But I mean, I don't, Saison, you'd have to tell me. I'm watching them, but I don't watch every episode. So you'd have to tell me in particular like what he said, and then I'd have to kind of look in to see where he's coming from with it. Cree said, "Have you had a chance to evaluate the Eagles' cap recently? I heard they have the sixth most available cap money for 2022. I don't know if they have the sixth most. Cree, that seems a little bit exaggerated to me. But I don't know because I don't know the rest of the league. I don't know how dire their cap situation is. I will say it's measured to be between 12 and 14 million, but then you have to measure in the aspects of like your rookie salary pool, things like that. You have a rookie pool that you have to pay for these draft picks, and that's going to take away from your available cap space. But look, at the end of the day, Cree, they're going to create money. We're not in a bad cap situation. I can tell you that. They will create money with guys like Brandon Brooks and some of these other guys. I would say conservatively. Now, this is not me saying that this will be the figure. I'm just saying if you want to take a conservative estimate of a number, I would say conservatively this team will have between $25 to $30 million worth of cap space when everything is said and done. Now, I think it's going to finish higher than that. I do. But conservatively, I feel pretty comfortable in saying that. What's up, Caleb? How you feeling, man? Said, do y'all feel like JJ has had a fair amount of chances through the years as a second-round receiver? I think there's some complexity to the situation of like not really targeting him at times, not really utilizing him maybe in his best role in the red zone, more so just as a blocker. But at the same time, it's, Caleb, it's kind of like it's been 3 years and there's just hasn't, his first year was really ugly. He just didn't know where to be on the field at times. His second year, it was disappointing because he had that really great camp. Everyone thought he was going to be a part of the offense, and then we had nothing from him. It's hard to say, Caleb. Like, there's always some mitigating circumstances that have to be considered with any player, but I think if you're the Eagles, I'm not saying you just outright cut a guy. You don't just cut a guy for the heck of cutting him. But if he gets beat, you got to cut him this year. You know what I mean? Same as Rager, because I think JJ has the same chances as Rager when he was drafted. It would be different. It's possible. You might have a point there, Caleb. I mean, it's hard to say. He's not targeted very often, that's for sure. Doug Peterson even said he shouldn't have played him more to get him reps as a ball player. And coach, how much experience and confidence it is. We haven't been building that with our young receivers. I mean, what's the switch up that you make, though, Caleb? Do you think the switch up's at the wide receiver coaching position? Do you slide Kevin Patullo in there as a wide receiver coach? And do you move on from Aaron Moorhead? Or do you think it's just purely a matter of like, okay, we've got to find a way of actually scheming guys into the game plan and getting the ball in their hands without necessarily changing up or mixing up coaching staff? Bobby said, every season Eagle fans want a linebacker in the first, and the Eagles never do it. When will we learn that? I don't think we ever will, man. I don't think it's ever going to set in, man. What's up, Shonuff? How you doing, buddy? Okay, even now, I think he overpaid Josh Sweat and Maddox. Maddox is decent, but that's a lot of money for a primary slot, and Sweat is inconsistent, earning $13 million a year. I thought Sweat had a pretty good end to the season, man. I thought he was pretty productive coming down the stretch. I mean, everything's debatable, material. I mean, everything's debatable when it comes to contracts. I think if you look at the contract value, I don't think he overpaid. When you look at their age, where they ranked, I think that he paid them what is the actual value of their production. I think it's a bit of a nuanced argument there. Cree said the cap space is the reason that I think Howie will trade at least one of their first-round picks. It's possible, Cree. That's very, very possible. Lane Johnson was a more productive receiver than JJ this year. That's kind of, true in a way, Chris. You're right. He caught a touchdown, but, it's a tough situation, man. Like, at some point, we do got to get guys in here, and they got to win versus press. Opportunities have to be had, and I think that to an extent, we heard Coach take it on himself by saying that, you can't have a top 10 pick at the end of, at the wide receiver position that you just drafted removed for 3 series of a football game. Like, that can't happen. He's got to be better at the game management aspect of play calling. He talked about the fact that, Quez Watkins deserved more opportunities than he got on the season. And I'm hoping that's all, to me, that's all game management. That's the game management side of your play calling. I'm hoping it gets better. I'm hoping that gets better with these guys because, you got a guy that called over 600 yards in Quez Watkins, which is no small feat, man. I mean, it's been a long time since we had guys doing that. We got 2 receivers over 500 yards. It's been a really long time since that occurred. I do think that Devontae Smith still has some things to learn, if I'm being quite honest, from a receiver perspective. But for being a rookie, he's as good as any rookie I've watched recently play that position. He's pretty good at it. I don't know if we have that third option. I think Caleb's trying to say that maybe they should be analyzing and getting more opportunities to in-house options, but saying that maybe JJ deserved as many opportunities as we gave Rager. And I can understand that standpoint, but yeah, it's tough, man. Bro, he said so much reckless-ish, it would take me an hour to break it down to you. Their new pod dropped today when you get a time to check it out. Yeah, I gotta I'll do what I can do to check it out, Saison. I got a few things going on, like I'm working on publishing some stuff. So I had to change the cover for the quarterback tracking journal that I made for everybody. I had to change that because I'm using Kindle Direct Publishing. So I had to change it so I can get it listed up on Amazon for you guys. I'm hoping to get that up by this weekend. I was really hoping to get it up this week for you guys, but it didn't work out that way. So I'm going to try to circle back around to it, but I also got to write some articles for you guys for the website. And you know how it is, guys. I got to get a few things up and going here, but I'll try to sit down tonight and put some headsets in and watch the show. Russell said, how do you feel about bringing back Brandon Brooks? If Kelsey retires, that could allow you to retain your excellent depth with Isaac or Dickerson at center. Driscoll and Herbig as overqualified backups. I think that you can't rule anything out, Russell, and I don't think that he was necessarily I mean, look, he didn't give you a whole lot to judge the situation on, to be honest, Russell. I will say that if you bring back Brandon Brooks, you have to do something with that contract. They have to. It's just too much cap hit in 2022. It just leaves you with no space. Now, they can do what everyone hates to hear here, which is they can take some of that base money and convert it into option money. They can do that, and it will give you space. But I didn't hear a definitive answer about him retiring either, though, Russell. I mean, it didn't sound like he was retiring from Howie's perspective, but I didn't hear a definitive yes or no, you know what I mean, to that question. So it's hard to say because they did ask him outright if he was retiring. And I didn't hear that as a yes or a no, honestly. Caleb said, I was saying we need a new wide receiver coach, but to be honest, I don't know much about him or what we have available. So I try not to say that or speak on it often, but just from a quick view, I feel like it could maybe. Hard to say. I mean, I know a little bit about Aaron Moorhead. He did a really good job in college. I mean, he was really good at, I believe it was Vanderbilt was his last job. And then I think he coached at Texas A&M. His guys that made it in the league speak really highly of him. They say that he's a really good coach. Sometimes it's not the coach's fault. Sometimes it's talent. You know what I mean? It's easy to coach good talent. Anyone can coach good enough talent. You know what I mean? But there hasn't been outside, we can make the argument that Quez showed progress, but outside of Quez, none of these young guys progressed. JJ didn't progress. Rager didn't progress. And could be argued they actually regressed, not progressed. You know what I mean? Devontae Smith is such a good player that it's hard to give somebody props for that. I mean, it's not that he couldn't have helped and been a big part of Devontae's success, but that's a really hard thing to grade just because you already know that player is incredibly talented. So it's hard to say what his role was and you know what I mean? It's such a hard thing to do without a sit down conversation with that particular person to diagnose their actual knowledge level and what they're actually doing. And, they don't allow you to see certain elements of practice anymore. So I can't even judge the drills he's running and if it's the most effective way of progressing these guys because I don't get access to it. I mean, Caleb, my honest to God hope is to one day actually be able to get a media license for this company and to actually be able to go in. I can't say certain things. I'm relegated to it, but I can make better assessments. They don't let you discuss certain things that you're allowed to see, but it would definitely give me a better idea of how to judge some of these coaches for sure. Maybe help us. Russell said, unless you secure a starter at another position from cutting or trading Brooks, it might be better value, in my opinion, to just bring him back to compete. He's an excellent player when healthy. I agree that you're not upgrading over Brooks when he's healthy, Russell. I do agree with that perspective. You're right. But I also feel like he hasn't been on the field. He just hasn't been on the field. He's getting older. He's very expensive. I mean, I think it would help if you had Driscoll more health, was remaining or maintaining his health, I should say. It's the correct way of saying that in seasons because, Driscoll has been injured the last 2 years as well. So he hasn't stayed on the field. But I do think that Driscoll and Sayamalu were respectable dudes. I mean, Sayamalu hasn't played a ton on the right side. I do think that they envision Sayamalu more as the center. And sure, I mean, if we're talking Driscoll, I think Driscoll is perfectly respectable. It's just a matter of his health. I think that Nate Herbig is a quality backup. But, yeah, we're getting into the weeds a little bit, Russell, right? To where, like, I like Owasika a lot. I've been driving that guy's fan bus, Coyote Owasika. But I don't know that he's ready for it to be in the NFL as a major contributor as a backup yet. Hopefully I can get Caleb. Caleb, he's a former collegiate offensive lineman. Jalen's a former collegiate offensive lineman. I'm hoping to get those two guys' eyes on this offensive line. I got something coming up with these two guys. I just need to schedule a date and let them know when we're going to do it and get film to them. But maybe that's something that they can look into and we can have a discussion, across the community about where Driscoll is and like what happens if you do let go of a player like Brandon Brooks. Like, what is the downfall in terms of that kind of production? Saison said, but long story short, he was expecting Jalen to play like an all-pro when he was a first-year quarterback and infused in a new system with a new head coach, knowing that Jalen was originally drafted to be a developmental backup. So he was pretty harsh in his critique, I take it. Natiro said, JJ is the reason Burke scares me. Separation is the best indicator for success in the NFL. I will say one thing, though, about Treylon Burks is that he's really good after the catch, man. His yak numbers are really, really special. Now, I will say this, Natiro. I will not speak on if he's separating because I have not watched enough film to determine that, Natiro, to be fair. I haven't, to be quite honest about it. So I would have to really judge the film and see it. He's a tall dude. From the little bit I've watched of him, I thought he did a pretty good job at sinking his hips for a guy that's like his size. I mean, I thought that, because like he's like, what, 6'3", 220-ish. And he kind of shocked me for what I saw on film with how good he was at getting that frame at the top of the route stem and sinking the hips. I mean, it kind of shocked me a little bit that he was that good at it. I will say that maybe it is a little encouraging, though, that, yes, maybe he's not separating. Maybe that is something I need to look into, Natiro. But he did play in the SEC, and he was productive in the SEC. And they do put a lot of NFL corners. They put a lot of corners in the NFL, I should say. So, I mean, definitely – I get what you're saying, but hard to tell right now. Matt Hatter said Amari Cooper 2021 68 receptions, 865 yards and a 65% catch rate compared to Quez's 2021, which was 43 for 647 and 69.4 catch percentage. Quez is $800,000. Cooper's $20 million. Yeah, they got to find a way of getting the ball to him more. I definitely agree with that, Matt Hatter. They got to get the ball into Quez more. But Quez has got some growth to do too. To be honest, Matt Hatter, he's got some growth in his route development, to be honest. Bobby said, even though they kind of said Hurts is our guy next season, yeah, unless Howie can make a deal for Wilson, Watson, etc. He also said Wentz was our guy too after less. Yeah, there's always an element of skepticism, Bobby, and I agree. There's always an element of skepticism. And he left the door open. I even talked about it in my video where I talked about, like, one of the last questions that was asked was about scenarios of whether or not things could change for Jalen Hurts as your 2022 starter. He was asking about scenarios. And it was, I don't know if it was Jeff McClain. It was just they just said Jeff in the press conference. And he talks about opportunities come up in the league and he can't say what opportunities will be there. So he clearly left the door a little open. You know what I mean? Terrence, what's up, buddy? He said, do you think we will have a shot at getting Michael Thomas from the Saints? They have to create the money for it. See, what I don't want to do is have people think that, like, oh, we won't have the money for a player. Howie can create money. I have no doubt Howie can create money. And if the guys on the team want a guy like Michael Thomas, they'll assist in helping you create the money to go get that player. I don't know that depending, you know what I'm saying? Like, depending on how you're viewing the offseason and like what other areas of need you have, there's always an opportunity cost, if you will, right? Opportunity cost meaning like for every action you take, there was a subsequent action you can no longer take. You know what I mean? Like you gave up something to gain something. So if you go get a guy like, Michael Thomas, he's probably going to get some bank. He's probably going to get paid. You know what I mean? So it's probably going to take away from you being able to maybe get a guy like an Ugba at defensive end to come in here and play with Josh Sweat, who I think both of those two guys together are tremendous athletes. Might take away from you being able to get like a better linebacker. Might take away from your ability to go get, a safety or a corner. You know what I mean? Like we'd be giving something up if we did that. What it is we're giving up and whether or not it's the right move, that's for time to obviously to tell us. You know what I mean? Bobby said, "What do you think about Hurts working with quarterback coach Jordan Palmer?" He has worked with Mahomes, Watson, Allen before, and they all improved as passers, etc. Well, I mean, Watson, I don't think was Palmer. Watson worked with Deshaun Watson worked with Quincy Avery, same person that's been working with Jalen Hurts. It's really about Brian Johnson, right? Brian Johnson is the quarterback coach. Brian Johnson's got a personal relationship with Jalen Hurts. He should be able to help Jalen identify who's the best guy to go to fix whatever they identify, right? Because the first part here, Bobby, is, Coach Sirianni, Coach Steichen, and then Coach Johnson, Brian Johnson, have to sit down, review the film, pull Jalen into a meeting and say, look, X, Y, and Z are your biggest problems here. Here's your biggest of these three, though. This is the thing that you need to spend the majority of your offseason doing and improving upon. And this is, in our opinion, the guy who probably gives you the best opportunity to grow in this term. This is, this is what he does as a specialty. This is where his strength is, right? So, I mean, there is a chance that he could go away. Quincy Avery does, Quincy Avery's specialty is helping guys play on time, on schedule with your offense, right? Especially younger quarterbacks. Palmer is a little bit more amendable to working with guys in terms of the rhythm aspect of things, playing in rhythm with your offense. So it's really a matter of like how they view the situation. You know what I mean? Like who they put in front of Jalen Hurts and the relationship Jalen Hurts has with each of these individual quarterback coaches. I have no clue who it'll be, man, but it's definitely a storyline to watch, Bobby, is who does he go to and work with? I mean, it's definitely a storyline to watch. I love seeing and hearing Nick light up when he talks about Quez. Got depressed about Rager. I wonder how this is going to work next year with a number 2. Yeah, interesting, right? Cree said, has your film evaluation of Devontae Smith indicated that he struggles with press coverage? Only asking because of his slight frame. I wouldn't say it's necessarily struggles with press coverage. He struggles with certain elements of physicality. He can get removed from a play if he cannot get off of a guy fast enough. But I will say that he's far better at releasing off the line of scrimmage than like Jalen Rager is. He's far more nuanced at doing it. He's far better at it. Jalen does this weird thing where he it's like a stutter step, to where he does a delayed step to try to beat man press. And he's done this ever since college. And it just allows dudes to get into his body, where I think that Devontae Smith is a little better at actually trying to attack the leverage. Now, some dudes that are stronger get their hands on him, and we saw that in the very first meeting in against New York, to where Bradbury and those guys got their hands on him and disrupted his routes a little bit. And, the first meeting, he didn't have the results he probably wanted. But the second meeting around, you can see that this guy studies film, and he knew what they did to him, and he was ready for it the second time around. I think he's good, but I still think there's some elements he's got to get better at, Cree. Russell said backup tight end is a need if we're going to still be run heavy next season. Stoll is fine as a number 3, but I would like to see them find a Delaney Walker type passing option out of 12 and 13 needs improvement. I think they thought of Tyree Jackson in that role. I think that's where they wanted Tyree Jackson, but suffering the ACL so late in the season like he did, it's going to complicate it for Tyree Jackson. And I wouldn't be shocked if they don't find a low-cost veteran, to be honest. Jose said, any tight ends you think we would draft? Eagles usually love running 2 tight end sets. It's always a possibility, Jose. I don't know that I'm far enough into evaluation to say who is the right fit for the Eagles at this point in time. You always have to consider it with Philadelphia, just because they, especially even Nick. Nick loves to run 12 and 13 personnel. They did that in Indianapolis as well. A lot of people looked at 12 personnel and saw that he didn't run anywhere near as much 12 personnel as like Doug did. But what they also forgot was, number 1, we had Goddard and Ertz, so of course we ran a lot of 12 personnel. But also, When you took 12 and 13 personnel and you combined them together, it painted a completely different story of how often they used multiple tight ends in Indianapolis. It's always a possibility, Jose. It's a possibility. You know, they've definitely gone in the undrafted rookie free agent market a couple of times searching for that guy. Dante said, Aaron Rodgers, you look at this team as an immediate Super Bowl contender. No, I look at us as being vastly better, sure. But I still think that ultimately the team is still too young. I don't think there's enough pieces defensively. I'm not saying that you couldn't, depending on what you have to give up to get in Aaron Rodgers, you still couldn't build that roster. I'm not saying that. But as is, if you just plugged Aaron Rodgers into the current roster, no, I don't think it made us a Super Bowl contender. However, it will cost, it's going to be very expensive. I have a feeling the Eagles will target Anthony Barr, Gannon connection. Already have brought in Wilson and Harris. Barr plays a crucial role in that mini scheme, and as a free agent would fit here. Yeah, he's a Sam linebacker. He's, I thought that the Eagles should have really been more interested in Jamie Collins when he got let go from Detroit this year. Jamie Collins is not Anthony Barr in terms of like the type of player. Anthony Barr is the better player, but Jamie Collins is physically very similar to Anthony Barr, and those type of dudes are really hard to find. Those guys that are really defensive ends that can run and cover, that ain't easy to find those dudes, because Anthony Barr is a defensive end playing Sam linebacker that's got crazy athletic abilities. It's hard to find those dudes. It really is. My question, though, is, Russell's, what do you think that cost is going to be? And how important, because Mike Zimmer got let go of, and they could be going in a different direction, I think there's a better opportunity because they might be in a completely different system in Minnesota. But might they still want him back? It might be the other side to that. You know what I mean? Michael said, good morning, Gay City. I wanted to ask you how you personally would address the struggles of Hurts. He's got to work on his rhythm step, Michael. The biggest issue I see from Hurts' game is really, he's more so of a progression read quarterback at this point in his career. And that's why a lot of times people get frustrated with him, like, my God, this guy locks onto his first target. That's kind of a side effect of progression reads, because your first read comes off your rhythm step, so you're not scanning the field. It's not a scan situation. You're reading the coverage and the leverage of a defender. With that said, I don't think he anticipates throws very well. I don't. And that comes off your rhythm step, because when you're in a 3-step or a 5-step drop, your drop has to match the depth of the receiver's route. So that's a chemistry thing, right? And then once you hit that rhythm step, you need to judge in a microsecond if you got the right leverage against the coverage and the right leverage against that defender, where you can put a ball placed in the perfect position before the receiver breaks on it, and he's going to go get the football. And that's where I think the biggest issue lies with Jalen Hurts. I think he's got to get better at that. In terms of coaching that, it's, to an extent, that's a behavioral thing. You know what I mean? Like that's all about kind of instilling enough reps to change behavior. And that's not an easy thing to do. You need a lot of reps, and you got to keep at that. That doesn't just go away. You have to always keep on that. And I will say that I love the fact that Jalen is a worker, because there are some quarterbacks I would never trust to do this, just because I don't know that they would have the work ethic to do it, because we're talking about putting a tremendous amount of time in. I do trust the young man's work ethic. I'm not projecting he'll ever get there. It's hard to say, guys. It's hard to say that. Dante said Hurts is interesting. One hand, he left the door open for the quarterback talk. On the other hand, he did enough to stick with him. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Caleb said, I looked up the history on Rager. Him deciding to go to TCU over Oklahoma hindered him from consistent quarterback play and wide receiver development. That's why if we draft, I feel like we need a receiver from the SEC, Bama in particular. And he said LSU, maybe even like in Ohio State or Oklahoma, but TCU hasn't been wide receiver U like Oklahoma has produced as of late. That's fair, Caleb. It's a fair assessment. The Gambling Hippie said Tyree Jackson needed a full offseason to develop, but give him a few years and he will be solid, I think. Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate he suffered the ACL injury when he did. It stinks, man. Hurt season, what's good, buddy? He says, yo, what up, Gate? Good morning. All I got to say is go Eagles. And hashtag hurt season, laugh out loud. The Gambling Hippie said, how does Avery differ from Anthony Barr? Because he has played some defensive end and linebacker as well. Physically, they're different players. Anthony Barr is a very rangy dude. He's like 6'4", 6'5". He's got like over 35-inch wingspan. The dude can actually bring pressure. He can drop back. He's very good at dropping back into the flats and defending. He's a far, far more nuanced football player, to be honest. And just physically, he's a different dude in terms of the scope and the size of the guy. Avery doesn't necessarily have that coverage ability yet. I don't know if he'll get there. I'm not going to try to say Avery can never get there, but physically he's a little different. Although he's got his uses, and I don't think that they necessarily gave Avery a fair opportunity because I thought Avery should have been used more in A and B gap pressures. I mean, what's the point of having that guy as a joker, knowing the system and the scheme you run, and you don't really utilize him in that role? You know what I mean? Dante said, as long as they don't draft a player from the Pac-12 or Big 12, you just know stay SEC and leave a like. Any defensive end you would target in free agency. Seems like that position is a sneaky major need. Barnett leaving, Graham getting older, etc. Agba, the defensive end from Miami, Jose, would be one of the guys I would target. Hurt Season said, actually, what do you think of Mel Kiper's mock draft 1.0? I haven't watched any of these mock drafts yet, guys. The reason I don't watch mock drafts at this point is because I'm still building my draft board. I'm still building my top 100 guys, and I don't want to be influenced by external sources. So I tend to not really look at those things. I try to just pull data and film to populate my own belief system. If you start seeing other guys, it can influence what you think. So I haven't really looked yet. But I would probably say within the next couple of weeks, guys, you're going to probably see that pop up. I'm going to probably release my top 100. Mitch Kofsky said, hey, Gate City, your content is top notch. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Mitch. I appreciate that, buddy. Glizzy said, looking at mock drafts, guys like Dean and Sauce are going way before we pick. Do you think Howie trades up? He left the door open, Glizzy. He left the door open for that potential. He didn't rule out moving up or moving back or even moving into 2023. You know what I mean? He definitely left the window open for that potential opportunity to happen. That's kind of what I took from him on John McMullen's question, to where, basically he said, like, it's about fit and vision. And it's about, like, communicating with your coaching staff to know how a guy is going to fit the scheme. I felt like that's kind of like what he was getting at in terms of that, but hard to predict. Like, they've definitely taken corners in the first round before, not top 16 in a very long time. But they've taken corners in the first round of drafts before. It's been 79 since they took a linebacker. So, like, we would have to move up on top of it. It's hard to predict that one, Glizzy, to be honest. But I do think that Nakobe Dean is a good football player. I think he's one of the better players in this draft class. Saison said, if it was a perfect world, we would draft all our players from the SEC, ACC, and Big Ten. Yeah, it's tough. There are times where you got to, bring other guys up the board. I agree. But, you do the best you can on the evaluations. But I do think that there were indicators on both of those guys, Rager and on JJ, to say, like, to be cautionary in selecting them. To be fair, there were indicators. And I was pretty big on Rager. I thought Rager was going to be a lot better than he was. Now, I will say that you guys know that when I did my mock draft that year, being the Rager guy I passed on him. I did not take him at 21. As a matter of fact, I kept trading back because I thought that draft was really deep at wide receiver, and I knew I could get a wide receiver while collecting enough picks to build the rest of my football team. So I kept trading back. I trade back so much that everyone was like, Gate, you got to stop. This is not realistic. They're not trading back 3 times. And I eventually took a guy. But nonetheless, like, it's tough, man. It's tough to put an evaluation on how you look at conference that you're playing in. I see a lot of free agent talk, but how does the franchise tag come into play with players you're suggesting? For the Eagles, I think it's unlikely we franchise tag any of our guys, to be honest. Externally, you don't know. They got time to franchise tag guys. You know what I mean? There's plenty of time to franchise tag them. So you really don't know until you see that. You know what I mean? I understand that. Well, I won't mention who had us selecting, but he said a linebacker, defensive end, and a wide receiver. Thoughts? I mean, look, in a perfect world, I would love that kind of draft. I still think you need a corner, and I'm hoping that second round is a corner, just because look, maybe you can retain Steven Nelson and at least got respectability in your secondary, and you're not pressed to do that. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think you need a corner as well. But I can understand that. I still think you need a safety. Don't get me wrong. I feel like it's talent anywhere. Just we need ready receivers because I haven't seen much development. So we need a receiver that's basically ready to step on the field and have to come from a certain conference to fit that profile, pretty much. Yeah, I agree, guys. Stingley and Sauce were projected to go in the first round. Yeah, those both are really good football players. I'm not shocked. Taekwon said Rager should talk to Smitty about routes and getting open. Also, I think JJ time is up. It's possible, man. It's possible. It's a little easier to move on from a guy once you get into the final year of their contract. And a small defense and a small defense of Howie. Sorry, man. Read that one completely backwards there, Bobby. My bad. All GMs lie this time of year. It's true. It's the season of lying. That's very much true. The gambling hippie said, "I don't believe Allen Robinson will get the tag. They're rebuilding and want to get younger all around, in my opinion." Yeah, I mean, probably depends upon who their coach is and how they view the roster. To be quite honest, Her season said, "What do you feel is the bigger need between cornerback and safety?" Safety, in my opinion. I think safety is your bigger need, but they're both pretty big needs. We could have had Metcalf instead of JJ. Not gonna read the rest of that, Ken. Gate, how would you feel if the Eagles signed Justin Reed? I mean, look, at the end of the day, I look at things, Randy, in terms of like, does the person improve your roster, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's easy to sit here and say like you should avoid getting any, this player or that player, but at the end of the day, I look at Justin Reed, and we got a guy that's still young. He's 24 years old. He's got adequate size for a safety. I'm not a big fan of Houston's defense per se, but I got to be honest. Is he better than what the product is we're throwing out on the field? I think so, Randy. So I don't really hate that one at all. Now, my curiosity is, Justin Reed is kind of a known commodity around the league. How much is Justin Reed going to cost? And is Houston honestly going to let that guy walk out the door? Because if they let Justin Reed walk off the door, they're making a big mistake. Caleb said if we can get the wide receiver from Bama in the second round that tore his ACL would be a steal. If he falls that low, yeah, hard to say where his value is going to be now. We could have had Justin. Yeah, Justin Jefferson. Allen Robertson is the Alshon replacement if, we need it. I like Allen Robinson. He's a good football player. Got to see, look, he's had some health issues this year, so we'll have to see where he's at. Look, I mean, physically, 6'3", 220-pound guy, he's better than what we got. I'm going to say that now. Like, if I'm looking at it from, like, Rager and Greg Ward Jr. and, like, you know what I mean? Like, dude, he's better. He's a better player. Hurts long ball looks like a punt equals small box equals no good. Yeah, I agree, Ken, that is platform, the throwing base he throws from on passes over 20 yards is highly flawed. But if I'm looking at trying to improve the young man, I mean, I think it's something you can gradually improve. I don't think that's the biggest issue he has with his game. I think you got to get him to play in rhythm with the offense first, right? He's got to anticipate when guys are coming open. He's got to know when he hits that rhythm step, the ball's got to be out. I think that's just a bigger issue. And that's where I would focus my time with him at, personally. Dante said, speaking of conferences, what's your take on Lincoln Riley at USC and Utah and Oklahoma moved to SEC? Me, love it. More competition. I mean, look, Lincoln Riley at USC is a big deal. USC's got a marquee kind of coach again that it's been seeking and it's been wanting for a while. USC once upon a time was, they were that team. Back in the early 2000s, they were that team to beat. We'll see how it works. I don't think USC has ever struggled with recruiting. We'll see if Lincoln Riley can put together an actual winning, program that can compete for, for championships. Saison said Mel had us drafting linebacker Lloyd, defensive end AK from Penn State, and wide receiver Lavier, my bad, from Ohio State. I don't hate that draft, to be honest with you, but we'll see. A lot of people are penciling in a quarterback to us in the first round, but I think the Eagles are only willing to take a Patrick Peterson type lockdown cornerback in the first round and nothing less. They passed over many quarterbacks in the past. I think it depends on where you're picking, Russell, and where you're making the selection. I agree with you. If you're picking in the top 10, you got to have that kind of you have to be that kind of guy. If it's a top, I'd say I'd even extend it to top 12. If you're picking a cornerback with somewhere in that top 12 range, they have to be that level of athlete. But I will say, like, we pick guys that are not quite Patrick Peterson in the first round at corner. But that's normally in the back half of the first round. Show enough said I would definitely take Justin Reed. What's up, Hurt Season? Said, what would it cost to get Hamilton off all 3 picks, 2 first and a second? What do you think? It depends on where you're trying to move up to. It's hard to say. I don't know where he's going to get taken. Look, if you're sitting there at 15 with 15th and the 16th pick, and he's still available at 10, and they're willing to get down the draft a little bit, and sure, I don't think it's going to cost you, well, to be honest with you, it might. It's 5 picks. That's 5 picks, so it's going to probably cost you a couple of firsts to do that. It's 5. I shouldn't say 5 picks, but it's 5, it's moving up 5 places, if you will. Ken said, you trust Howie and Bums to get 3 first-round picks correct all of a sudden? I do, Ken, because it's not just Howie. And Howie had a really good 2021 draft, to be fair, Ken. He had a really good 2018 draft. It's not just Howie. You know what I mean? Philly said, Howie and Nick Sirianni sound like a bunch of cheerleaders. I think quarterback that they make falls to 15, then he will take them. I don't think there's any quarterback in this draft, in my opinion, guys, that's worth a top 16 pick. I'm not saying that they won't go that way. They won't go as high as a top 16 pick just because it's quarterbacks. But I don't think there's any of those guys that really and honestly should be picked that high. Bobby said, after Hamilton, any early thoughts on any other safety in the draft? Yeah, we talked about this a couple of days ago, Bobby. Like, I think that, not for a first-round value, Bobby. I don't think I'd be in the first round for any other safety that's in the 2022 draft class. To be quite fair, because I don't think any of those dudes are worth that kind of pick. But Brisker and Battle are probably the next 2 that I would say. I don't know how you say his name. Is it Cine? Louis Cine from Georgia. I like his film a lot. There's definitely a few guys out there that I would look into in the 2nd and 3rd round of the draft to try to potentially grab as a safety. But in terms of like top half of the draft, top 16 pick in particular, Bobby, it's just Hamilton, in my opinion. But we haven't seen the combine. We haven't seen pro days, and dudes will fall and dudes will rise. You know how it works, Bobby. Gleesy said, I wouldn't be mad with Linderbaum and one of the Bama receivers along with the same capital after draft. Yeah, like Linderbaum's a really good player. Like I wouldn't hate that one either, although I don't think, look, offensive line's probably not our largest of needs, but you can argue that, look, if you draft Linderbaum, you got your future center, so you really insure yourself for Jason Kelsey. You can either use Isaac Seumalo to compete on the right side with Driscoll, or you can use him for trade bait because he's still a starting quality guard in the league. And if there's a team that needs a left guard, Isaac Seumalo is still a good player. I could see that. I could definitely see that, Gleazy. Dante said, I like Jordan Battle. Maybe he slips to the 2nd round. It's going to be a great draft. Yeah, that's the problem with Jordan Battle and Jaquan Brisker is I don't know if those guys are going to go in the late 1st. But if they do slip into the 2nd round, I would absolutely have interest in them. Hurts Season said, do you think Hurts will improve on his flaws? Honestly, I love Hurts and want him to succeed, which is why I'm consistently defending him. But am I being a homer for defending him? Nobody knows if he's going to improve upon it. Hurts Season. I can't say that definitively. You know what I mean? Like, I think the young man has as good as an opportunity to improve upon the issues that I'm identifying, which mostly is in playing within rhythm of the offense, as any other, potential prospect out there. I think he has the work ethic. But ultimately, just because you have the work ethic doesn't guarantee results. You know what I mean? So it's really hard to say. Chris said, if you could package Hurts in the 15th pick to move up and take their Houston's number 3 pick, would you do that? If so, who would you take? Chris, I wouldn't do that. I'm not going to trade my quarterback in a first round pick to get to the top 3, unless I'm taking a quarterback in the top 3 picks. You know what I mean? I just think quarterback's too important of a position. Ken said, "I agree, Coach. He has to read defenses better. His father was a coach. He was coached. He was coached in high school, college, pros. He couldn't find a cross in in a church equals no good." Randy said, "Gate thought on Sauce Gardner out of Cincinnati. Physical guy. Plays the game really physically. Low key, I like his play a lot. Little concerned with his eye discipline and zone coverage, to be honest. I don't think that the eye discipline is quite there yet, but in terms of man coverage, man, I mean, he fights. He definitely fights for the football." What's up, LAG? How you doing, buddy? Caleb said, "Not gonna lie, guys, Linderbaum in the first round would be horrible." Why do you think it would be horrible? I'm curious, Caleb. Why do you think Linderbaum would be horrible? Is it just because you don't think a center should be drafted in the top 16? Ken Sod said, "First round picks not only should start immediately, but maybe, just maybe, one could be a Pro Bowler." However, last 10 years, where's the first round Pro Bowler equals none equals Howie. Lurie going the BS Wonderlicks. BS. It annoys me that they don't value certain positions, but a lot of times they've been right passing on players fans want it. Pat Queen, Ken Murray were guys we wanted that are questionable players right now. That's fair, Russell. That's fair. Not just because we have good young O linemen, but first round pick on him when we have other needs ain't smart. And then I just think Linderbaum is a tad bit overrated. He is no Kelsey. Interesting. I'd love to see you guys break down film on that one, Caleb. I think that's a person that's, you know what I mean? Like that's definitely a fan favorite here. So I would love to see the perspective. I know you've played collegiately, so I know you've played the position, which really makes it interesting to me because I know you were a collegiate center. So I would definitely love to hear your thoughts on that one. You saw the best out of Hurts. Because Bobby Murphy has an NFL name. He said, "Thanks. I wish I had their money too." Y'all funny for that one, man. If you had to draft a quarterback, who would you draft and how would you move up? I don't love this class, LAG. I'm not going to lie. I don't love this class at all. I'm not touching these dudes in the top 16 picks. I think the smartest idea is to stay put and stay patient. If I'm drafting this class, I'm drafting this class in particular. If I'm going to throw darts at the board at the quarterback position, I'm drafting for what I think would be the most upside player. Kenny Pickett, I'm not too sure where that ceiling is, man. I'm not too sure that he's not already quite close to reaching his best play already. I'm not saying a rookie's, I mean, obviously there's going to be advancements. It's not like he's completely solidified of what he'll be as a rookie in the NFL, but I don't know that growth level is quite the same as other guys out there. So that would probably leave me with like Malik Willis, who's I think has a ton of, I think you have a lot that you can grow there because he hasn't played in an NFL system. He hasn't played against NFL talent. He's got a lot he has to work on to be better. But that's not a guy that you're starting day one. So it's going to drive Ken, Sod crazy because it's probably not a day one starter. Then you look at the young man that came, was it Ole Miss or whatever he plays for? Can't think of his name. He's a mobile quarterback. I would say that he's in that realm of a guy that where you're playing off of talent. He's got some things he's got to work on. I don't think that he's a day one starter either, but he's at least got the frame, and he's got the outside playmaking abilities that if you can get him to learn how to play on schedule, if you can get him to learn how to play in rhythm with an offense, mixed in with that special ability he has outside the pocket, mixed in with some, look, he was a little rough in his decision making in 2020. He was much improved in 2021. I do think that you could get away with, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can get away with those type of guys in terms of, like, if you have an established veteran. Like, so what I'm saying is step one is you better have an established veteran if you're messing around with this draft class, in my opinion. Different guys have different guys rated different ways. I like Carson Strong a lot personally, but I don't think that's a dude I'm touching anywhere near the first round either. Bailey Zapp from Western Kentucky is another guy that, if you're in on Kenny Pickett and you miss on Kenny Pickett and you got a second round grade on a Bailey Zapp, I think a Bailey Zapp would be a guy, depending on where you're grading guys, would make a crap ton of sense. Matt Corral, who was talking about earlier from Ole Miss. Matt Corral, I would say, like, if you want the most polished guy from, like, been involved in camp since he was a kid, and I'm not a big fan of this guy, and I'll tell you right now, I'm biased. Sam Howell is your most NFL ready dude out there. I don't love his upside. I don't love his upside. And yes, I'm a little biased because he's a UNC guy and I'm an NC State guy, but I truly don't love his upside, to be honest. I would be a little bit more patient here with this draft class in particular. Randy Jones said, love the new platform, bro. Much success. Appreciate it, man. Thank you, guys. Hurt Season said, I wouldn't mind a center. Kelsey won't be here for many more years, maybe 2 more max, right? Ken says, sorry, coach. As you can see, I'm extremely upset still. That's why we're here, man. I'm going to have to watch him more. I just seen some bad plays by him that surprised me. I'm going to have to watch more film on him, but what I watched wasn't Kelsey. They've been trying to compare him to him for a while now. I think it's because some of the things he does on the outside game, or using him for pulling, things like that. I would say that he's not 100% comparable to Kelsey, because I do think that he's kind of an in-betweener, like a guy that can get outside on those pulls, but at the same time, you can probably use him in different ways. I think he's a little stronger at the point. Kelsey's not the biggest dude. I think he's like an in-between guy in that sense, but I would love to see your thoughts on it, actually, like run film on him and actually see what you think about him. Eagles for the longest time live and die building in the trenches. It's true. I believe so, Hertzies. I'm pretty sure Pat Queen plays for the Ravens. When's the website coming, Gate, and what kind of info will be on it? Hopefully similar to what we get here. It's already there. So I'm in the process of transferring an old. So I made a mistake by going to Google's domains, and I bought my domain from Google. And then I built my website in WordPress, which was really stupid to do that, guys. I did it backwards. So I have to wait that 60, 90 days to basically transfer the URL. So I have a temporary URL that is linked down below. If you just follow the merch link, just go to the homepage. It'll take you right to the articles. Right now, we got a few guys that will be writing for it. I got to get some content up there myself. I need to write this week for you guys. We got a lot to talk about with the season ending, with the end of season press conference. There's a lot to break down from the off season standpoint. That's where I'm going to put all the guides at. So I'm going to be doing my top 100 board, my top one. I might even expand it to 150. We'll see. So that's where all that material will be found, Hurt Season. We think Kelsey's athleticism is just it. It's huge, but not all his weapons. It gets off. It's very dangerous. His ability to get off the ball, Linderbaum don't have that. It's a huge difference. So you're saying his initial release off the football. Matt Corral, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking of, Chris Perez. Dante said, what about Cedric Wilson from Dallas? Don't hate him, man. He's been pretty good. I'm not going to say, like, the problem with getting guys like Cedric Wilson, sorry, guys, is that I think that, you're kind of getting something that's pretty similar to Quez. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that they're not upgrades. I'm not saying that you can't use guys that are similar, but it is kind of similar to what we already have on the team. Bring back Foles for a number 2 next year. You would trade a second-round pick for him? I'm hoping we get Bailey Zapp in the third. I like Bailey Zapp. Interesting because, he came from 2 small schools. You know what I mean? Like, he came from, like, Houston Baptist, I believe, to Western Kentucky. So, you have to be really – you got to be really particular with the film you pull from him. But when he played he played a couple of Big Ten teams this past year. I thought he was really good against the big. What quarterbacks for next year's draft? I got a whole thing coming up on that, Dante, where I'm going to break them down. The big names are going to be Malik Willis, Matt Corral. You're going to have Kenny Pickett, Sam Howell. There's one more I'm missing here, guys. Hang on. There's one more that's been discussed in that area of range. Some people have Carson Strong that high. I think Carson Strong to me is more. I think Howell and Strong are really second-round guys to me. And I think in other drafts, they might even be third-round guys, but I'll take a wild guess that's where they're going to go. They're going to go in that time frame there. But Desmond Ridder. Sorry, Desmond Ridder was the other guy I couldn't quite get around to. Desmond Ridder. That's kind of the 5 that I've heard the most of. But, yeah. Lastly, Stoutland is the best in the world. Whatever he says and does is clearly the way to go. But I don't think we get him. If we do, Stoutland would have a good reason. I trust him clearly. I like that. In Stout, we trust. I feel Foles is the best person to label a scheme fit. He didn't really have much success anywhere else. I like Willis a lot in 2 years, honestly. If he fell to 15, I'd take him and stash him for a year. Let Hurts start and see if he can secure himself a trade. Willis has great tools, needs great coaching. Hurts season said, nice. I'm going to check that out for sure. Hey, Gate, do you like Ojabo out of Michigan? I like the athleticism I see on film, Randy. I'm skeptical, though. I'm skeptical of the fit. I think he's going to be, I don't know, man. I mean, there's times where I think he's going to be a 5 tech in the NFL, Randy. And there's times I think he's better suited to be a 34, edge rusher, to be honest, basically being that rush linebacker in a 34. He's kind of a difficult one to project, to be honest, Randy. Randy said no Dallas players on the Eagles. Why does Quest seem to get lazy at the end of routes? I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but in the Tampa Bay game, he seemed to slow down at the catch or ends his routes. Am I wrong? No, you're not wrong. I wouldn't call it lazy, but you're not wrong in what your eyes are seeing, which is he does cut off routes too soon. It has to do with generally speaking, when you're running a route, basically there's a point where the ball should be there if it's coming to you. And what I don't know is I don't know if he was running a clear route. So clear route meaning like the purpose of that route is basically to bring coverage off of another person, right? And then he wasn't expecting the football to come to him and he gets to a certain depth and then all of a sudden it comes to him. Now, in saying that, there's a lot that has to be considered. Like, number one, does Jalen Hurts even have the autonomy to throw to a clear route? And I don't know that that's true. You know what I mean? Like, that's something that I'd have to have Nick or Jalen tell me, to be honest. Or Steichen or whoever, someone that's in that room. Brian Johnson, who's the quarterback coach. But in saying that, like, there is a point to where at least a scramble drill should run in your head as a wide receiver. To this point, the ball is not to me. The ball's still not out of the quarterback's hands. I should be trying to probably make myself available because we're at the point of the play now to where this is going to be, this is off schedule, right? We're playing off schedule and out of rhythm. So I got to make myself available as a target. But yeah, I mean, we've seen that from a few different guys to where there was the one season in JJ's rookie year to where he kept bouncing. He like bounced himself right outside of the read and he was like hitching up and he kept bouncing. And it's like, what are you doing? So yeah, I mean, we've had receivers that do that these young guys. Russell said, I wonder what kind of offer Juju will get. Coming off injury, there could be some value there for a 25-year-old receiver. I don't think Pitt has been able to utilize its wide receiver talent the last 2 years with Ben. That's fair, and he's certainly better than some of the guys we have on the roster, Russell. I think that's absolutely fair to say that he might be better than people think. I would trade a second-round pick for Foles in case Hurts struggles. Bring back Clement so I don't have to see the hometown kid in a Cowboy jersey, but he can be the punt returner. I heard we need one. It's funny, guys. What's up, Gate City? What's up, Drew? How you doing, buddy? Said, how would you draft if both were available at 15? Devin Lloyd or Nakobe Dean. Both are great prospects. Lloyd would fit well as an outside linebacker for us. Dean would also fit well in that middle. It's an excellent question, man. I want to say Nakobe Dean just because what I've seen on Nakobe Dean's film, Drew, looks like an impact player to me. He looks like an impact player to me, and Devin Lloyd strikes me as just a really solid player. I can tell you this. The Eagles draft either one of these guys, I would be really, really happy with that draft pick. I really would. But Nakobe Dean seems to have like something that could be potentially special in the NFL. What makes a good defensive end? Several things kind of contribute to that hurt season, to be honest. To begin with, if you're a good defensive end, it's got a lot to do with your get off the ball. You know, how fast you are off that ball. It's got a lot to do with things that people don't know, such as like your hip placement. And that's where guys like Caleb and Jalen could probably explain that a little better than someone like me can. But a lot of times what I've heard from guys that were coaching the defensive line when I was around it was they really did focus on guys engaging their hips correctly as they get into the offensive lineman and making sure that's really about leverage. And you hear that more so on the interior of the line than you do on the outside as a pass rusher. You got to be able to bend the edge. You know, that's all about the angle you take. And then you need an arsenal of pass rush moves. A lot of guys have really good initial pass rush moves. It really takes a long time to develop those secondary moves. It takes some experience. That's why when you get a guy coming out of college that kind of has an arsenal of pass rush moves as a 20-some-year-old kid, young man, I should say. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like those dudes are kind of special. There's also other elements that has to do with strength and stuff like that. Some dudes can just, completely knock a dude off balance with the power and explosion they get to. So, like, if you think of guys that go speed to power really well as a passer, they go speed to power in their pass rush moves, and they could just absolutely like just knock a dude, tackle off his mark, get him off balance. There's different ways of looking at it. There's different type of pass rushers, basically. Marky said, with this new website, are you also going to break down guys for the 2023 draft this year and build on that breakdown after their final year in college? That's not a bad idea, Marky, to be honest. I might do that as the season goes on, kind of track what's going on with those guys. Russell said, what do you think of Trayvon Walker in Kingston and Nabry, the dude from South Carolina? I can't say his name, man, Russell. People seem to be all over the place with them. Some people think they're firm first rounders. Other people see them as mid to late second rounders. I can't say value. I don't know the value on them, Russell, because there were some guys last year that shocked people how far they went up, how quick they got drafted in 2021's draft class. Barber went higher than people thought. I will say, when I look at it, I don't know how you say his name, Nigbree. I have no clue how you say that. The dude from South Carolina. I liked his film a lot. I have not had an opportunity to look at Trayvon Walker's film as in depth yet, but I did like Kingston's film a lot. I thought that there's something there. Now, I don't know if that's a first-round talent. It's hard to say, Russell. But I definitely think that if you're there in the second round with our pick and that guy's still on the board, I wouldn't mind that pick. I certainly wouldn't mind that pick. Eagles Clips, what's up, buddy? He said, I'd like to see us grab Donovan West to replace Kelsey in the third round. I like the depth you're going into there, man, to go all the way to the third round this early in the draft. That's pretty cool, man. That's pretty good depth. Randy said, what defensive end would you like the Eagles to pick up if I was drafting? I mean, all things considered, if it's just like, you got the number one pick, like who are you taking kind of, Randy, or like respectable to like the value we have, right, to where we could pick. Karlaftis is all over the place. I've seen that guy, the Purdue defensive end. I've seen him as high as clear top 10 pick to falling into top 20. If Clarftis is there in the top 20, I think you have to consider drafting him. If you're looking for the athleticism, and I think that's the hard part is like, what are you looking for? Like, what is the scheme on Jonathan Gannon? What is the actual need of the player? And that's what I can't really say. But if I'm looking at first round values, like, Clarftis to me makes, I'd say, a ton of sense here. But I'd also look at the other young man that's at Michigan. I would look at him. He's more athletic. You named him earlier, Randy. His name's slipping my mind right this second. But those are the two guys I think that are in the range of where potentially be available for the Eagles, man. But Hutchinson, I think, is the best in this draft class. I think Thibodeau has like a ton of potential. Like, the dude's athletic as crap, but I don't have him as rated as highly as I do Hutchinson. Why is that guy slipping my name? Randy, it's bothering me that his name just slipped right through my mind. You could get Foles for a 6 or less. Second is way too much in my opinion. Yeah, I don't think I'd be up that high either. Minshew to the Steelers? Maybe. They definitely going to need a quarterback. And since they're in the playoffs, they might not have the quarterback of their choice in terms of the draft. With the Eagles' inability to develop wideouts, would you start avoiding them in the draft and go vets? And what vets would you have your heart set on? Robinson or Williams come to mind first. What's up, Frankie Fisher? I appreciate the comment, buddy. Yes and no. I don't think you can just avoid the draft, but I'm not depending upon the draft either, Frankie. Does that make sense what I'm saying here? Like, shore it up through a veteran. I like Mike Williams as the guy I think, you could argue to add to that list in terms of like need. He's not as talented as the two guys you just named. He's not. But I will say that if you look at Mike Williams and you did say Williams. So if you look at Allen Robinson's a better player. Mike Williams, though, is I think going to be a more affordable option, and I think he's good enough. You know what I mean? He's got familiarity with the coaching staff, so perhaps maybe there's actually not a possibility of getting that guy. Hard to say, though, man. If you can get a Michael Thomas, if you can get a Devontae Adams, if you can get an Allen Robinson, I think you probably should do it. I just don't know that the Eagles can get those guys. I'm not 100% sure if we're in the discussion of that, honestly. I'm hoping for it, man. I'm going to celebrate it just like everybody else if it happens, but don't know that it's realistic. Philly Fan D said, you think will be a player in free agency in 2022 similar to 2017? Philly Fan D, I think I might have missed what you're asking me there. Are you asking me, like, is there a marquee player? Like, is there like an impact player we can get inside of the 2022 free agency class? Yeah, I think you can look at Reed, the safety. A lot of guys talk about Reed, who's a safety. I think Ogbo, who's a defensive end that's out there from Miami. I think he could be an impact player for the Eagles. I look at trying to think here, guys. Wide receiver wise, Allen Robinson and all those guys, right? I don't think Mike Williams is, I would call, an impact player, but he's certainly an improvement to your roster, right? But like Allen Robinson could be an impact player. Devontae Adams is clearly an impact player. Michael Thomas is an impact player. Like those type of guys. Sure. Those dudes exist out there. I don't know if we're going to be there to get those guys. DeAnthony Thomas has been on the couch all year after opting out of 2020 for C19. No one signed him. Definitely could have been our punt returner. I don't see how that wouldn't be an upgrade. Hard to argue upgrades at this point because we don't have a lot. I really like Hutchinson. I do too. Exactly, Caleb. Very well said. It's different flavors of defensive end. It depends on what the defense wants. Gannon gone after this season. It's possible. I mean, he's already getting interest in coaching jobs, head coaching jobs. So, I mean, it's possible. It's very possible. Any defensive end that resembles the skill set of a Nick Bosa in this draft, he's a freaking stud. Watching him in the Dallas game before he went down, and he was impressive. Boy, that's putting a lot on a guy. Aiden Hutchinson is probably the most likely to be that style of player. I'm not comfortable saying he's Nick Bosa. Like, that's a lot of expectations to place on a guy. You know what I mean? Like, you'd be putting a ton of expectation on that young man. What do you think of the wide receiver from Arkansas? Last name, Traylon Barks. It's good, man. He's a very good yak guy. Surprisingly good yak guy. Really good after the catch. Caleb said, someone who can go speed to power consistently is dangerous. Exactly, Caleb. Like, those dudes are hard to find. When you find those guys, you covet them. No doubt about it. A big knock on Doug was developing young players. Very true, Bobby. With Sirianni being a former wide receiver coach, are you concerned with the lack of development of Rager, Watkins, etc.? Or should we be looking at Moorhead? I would argue Watkins has developed well. I think Rager and JJ are the bigger issues, right? Because they're both, those were top 100 picks. You know what I mean? Like, one's a first round guy, one's a second round guy. I think it's complex, Bobby. Did I expect better? Sure, absolutely, I expected better. We got a ton of wide receiver coaches in this building. Between Nick Sirianni to Kevin Patullo to Aaron Moorhead to even Shane Steichen working with wide receivers before. There's a ton of wide receiver coaches in this building, and it didn't pan out, which is a little. It put you off a little bit, right? Saying that, I mean, who knows, man? Who knows? Who knows if it's Moorhead or not? I mean, that's kind of the conversation. The gambling hippie said, I'd love for the Eagles to draft another prospect offensive lineman, someone like a Mulata, but maybe to be a future guard. What do you think about them training Dillard at right tackle to replace Johnson eventually? Whew. That's a long development. Who knows? We'll have to see where he's at this offseason, gambling hippie. Ojabo, thank you, Randy. Thank you. I'm like, man, it's bothering me because you just said his name and like I cannot think of it. Don't like seeing them have to push Mulata to the right side when Johnson is out. Yeah, I can understand that perspective. I can definitely understand not really wanting to have to like move multiple, but that's kind of like what Stoutland says. He doesn't want to move multiple guys around the formation. And I can understand that perspective that like what you're doing is you're weakening the entire line by doing something like that. You're creating more and more issues here. Hard to say, man. Hard to say what they're going to do in terms of how you handle that situation. All I know is we don't need to spend a first or second round pick on a center when Kelsey will be back next year and can help develop West. I don't know that Kelsey's back, man. I hope he is, Eagles Clip. I hope he is. I don't want to put that negativity in the air, so I'm just going to kind of avoid it a little bit. I hope he's back. Would you trade up to pick Michael Wright? My bad, man. That's the dude from Oregon, right? Philly born and raised. He's a little shorter, isn't he? He's like a 5'10", 5'11" guy. On brand with the Eagles, unfortunately, because even if we look at our fourth round pick from this past year, I mean, it's pretty much the same size profile. I got to look more into his film, man. I can't say definitively. I Shine 101. What's up, buddy? He said Kalarftis. I don't know how you say that dude's name, man. That is a crazy name there. From Purdue would be a nice pick, along with Devin Lloyd and that defensive tackle from Georgia. Yeah, that young man played just outside of Charlotte. I know exactly what you're talking about. I think it's Jordan Davis. He's big. Yeah. You think Trey Walker? Her season said, at this point, I'm just asking questions to see how you answer them. Your knowledge and the way you explain things in a way that even the most novice football fan can understand. That's clutch. Thank you, man. I appreciate that, buddy. Eagles Clip said, Allen Robinson would just be like Alshon Jeffrey in 2017. It really helped to win. So getting Robinson could really help Hurts. I don't hate Allen Robinson, man. It's a high-quality football player. We need him on the field, right? He's got to stay on the field. What's up, Michael Irvin? I owe you a comment, man. I'm sorry, buddy. I saw it. I got to get to it and answer it from the last video. He said, our skill position players, besides Smitty, were all brought in for wins. What type of players do you think Hurts needs to succeed? That is an excellent point, Michael. I think he needs guys in breaking routes that have enough wingspan to catch the football, right? If you got a guy that maybe is still struggling with the footwork, you heard Nick. You heard what Nick said about like trying to improve upon him. He had that little saying, feet, finish, right? So getting a guy that can erase mistakes, I think, is a big deal in breaking routes. Whether you're running a dig or, which is a mid-developing route, or you're running a slant route, which is, in between that short route distance, the 1 to 9 yards on most of those. I think you need that dude. I think this offense needs that type of guy. Eagles Clip said, I take a backup tight end and center in the draft and rest the defense and trade back one of those first. I hear you. The Gambling said, do you like Drake London or Burks better? Man, that is very similar dudes, to be honest. I'm not far enough in the film to say that one guy is better than the other. I will say that I am very impressed with Burks' run after the catch ability. I know that Drake London is a USC guy, but Treylon Burks, to me, screams Michael Pittman Jr. to me. What's up, Gate City? What topic are you on? We're everywhere, Eagles Realist. We're all over the place, buddy. What do you think about drafting a wide receiver if we don't sign or trade for a veteran? I don't think that's a bad idea, Eagles Realist. I think that you can't just give up on the position group. What's up, Jeremiah? I honestly have not looked at any mock drafts because I'm coming up with my top 100 player board, and I don't want to be influenced by anybody. Because if I start reading Kuiper and I start reading all these dudes, it's going to influence my thoughts. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to keep my thoughts away from those things. I'm purposely avoiding these things. Within the next couple of weeks, my top 100 to 150, I haven't decided if I'm going to expand upon the board yet. I'm going to release that on the website, guys. Hit that like, people. Hit that like button, people. Thank you. Appreciate you guys. Think linebacker in the first round? Whew. I hope so. Corey, I really do hope so, man. I hope so. But it's been since 1979. It's, everyone keeps asking me if I think it's going to happen this year, and I don't know. Kuiper. Okay, Hurt Season said Carl Oftis. How much cap space are we projected to have? Right now, it's like between 12 to 14 million, but that's not where we're going to end. Then you got to add in the, your draft pool. So your rookie draft pool has to come against that figure. So safely $5 to $7 million, but I'm going to be honest with you guys. We will end conservatively. We're going to end with $25 to $30 million. And that's a very conservative figure. I would take a wild guess that it's going to get over $30 million of available cap space. And that's just going to come from the subsequent moves we make in the offseason, guys. Very good question at Michael Irvin. Probably the most thoughtful of the offseason so far. What's up, Kenneth Thompson? How you doing, buddy? He said, do you think Howie still has the decision on who plays? If so, it might not be Gannon's fault. I think that's a complex situation there, Kenneth. Like, there are certain decisions where the general manager is involved, and it's kind of across the league, guys. It's not like other organizations don't have this happen as well. When there is contractual things going on, of course your GM is going to have a say. Now, I will say that some of the things I've heard said don't match up to me because, they did the right thing by Steven Nelson, right? Steven Nelson would have been due for a bonus had he played against Dallas, and because they didn't want, for what they deemed to give them the best chance at winning a playoff game, which did not work out in our favor, clearly, they sat him, but they made right by basically giving him a bonus. They basically gave him what the incentive would have been to give him a bonus to equal it. So I don't think that's what kind of played into it, but I think that it's really the coaching staffs for the most part that are setting your game day roster stuff. But when it comes to the 53, I'm going to tell you, Howie has a role in setting that 53, guys. A lot of GMs do. I'm not going to say every GM does because that's not necessarily true, but there is a good percentage of GMs that do have that kind of control. It doesn't mean he's the ultimate decision maker. It doesn't mean that he doesn't listen to what Nick or somebody might tell him, but he plays a role. I'm not going to lie and say he doesn't play a role in that. He does. What's up, Frankie? He said, what tough decisions do you see the front office making this year? I know Cox financially isn't probable, but this team's loyalty to a 30-plus-year-old player is slowly bringing us to mediocrity or lower. Brandon Brooks is a really tough decision there, and I think that it's probably going to work out to where they're either going to restructure that contract. They're going to convert some of that base into option-based money and create cap space in 2022, or he's going to get cut with a June 1st probably designation. If the right offer comes in for Fletcher Cox, there's a possibility they trade him. They might eat that dead money and trade him. I do think that is it's a potential, right? Like, I mean, if you get a day 2 pick for a 30-some-year-old Fletcher Cox, you have to take it. Now, I'm not saying that that's where his value is, but if someone comes in with a day 2 pick, you have to take it at this point. And, you know, Fletch is a great guy. Like, I have nothing against Fletch, man. He's an all-time evil. But, you know, it is what it is in the honesty of the moment here. Hurts needs a big body receiver. James said he would love to get Mechie in the second round. Yeah, somebody else was saying that earlier too, James, about, you know, because of the ACL, if that guy slips into the second round, you know, it's always interesting to look at those guys that might get undervalued because of that. I chucked out Burks from Arkansas. He's a Deebo Samuel mold, 6'2", 235. And Drake from USC has been compared to Mike Evans. Who would you rather want, Gate? Either player, to be honest, Aishan. I like both these guys a lot. There's something about Burks run after the catch ability, man. It just stands out to me, Aishan. His ability to really punish people after the catch, that's something I'm interested in. But I'm not going to hate if they take London Drake. I think he's a good football player. Or Landon Drake, I believe is his name. My bad, guys. If we don't go linebacker in the first round, would we look at the second or third round? I would hope so, Eagles realist. I think it's a very important position to where you cannot be playing around with outside the top 100 in terms of getting a guy. If you start taking chances on dudes that are outside the top 100, it's very risky. It's a very, very risky approach. They're both tall. They're both very tall guys. Hurts. I think he's 6'4-ish, 6'5-ish, like 210-ish, 215-ish, somewhere in that area. Gambling said, just a rumor so far, but if Brooks does retire or Kelsey, hopefully not, does that erase dead money like when players are cut, or do we still take on the dead money? No, you still eat the dead money because that's something that you promised the league to pay back. So unfortunately, you still take the dead money. Now, what they can do is they can wait to sign the papers until after June 1st. So at least it'll be a June 1st. So you get 2 years to pay it back. Marky Mac said, will your top 100 be Eagle specific or just who you believe are the top players in the draft, regardless of scheme fit? Currently, I'm working on just top 100 players. Now, I do think that is an interesting way of doing things. Maybe not top 100 for the Eagles, but a top 50 board or something like that for the Eagles. Because most guys, top 100 is pretty deep, man. You go 100 players at one given organization. That's really deep. I think even most organizations kind of cut it off after about 75 guys. Fletcher Cox has his hard to replace. Are you nuts? Fletcher Cox is hard to replace. Yeah, but you got to move on a guy a year too early than a year too late, Corey. You know what I mean? That's what makes the Pats so good at what they've done. You know what I mean? You have to know when it's time to move on from a guy. And I think that the draft is an important part of this. You have to have a guy in mind. You know, I like Milton Williams. I think Milton Williams is going to be good in the league, but I think Milton Williams has a very specific skill set, and he's not quite Fletch. He doesn't do what Fletch does. It's just a matter of what they do, guys. Chris said, if you get a new D coordinator, draft 4 defensive players and a wide receiver in the first 3 rounds, running back from Bama, that's enough to set Hurts up for success. If he cannot succeed, then he needs to go. I definitely think this is kind of the prove it year, guys. I agree with that. Like, they're not going to stick around forever on him. We'll have to at some point. Yeah, 6'5" Drake is bro, and he runs a 4.4 40. I think it's time to draft Fletcher Cox replacement. Don't want the Rager of linebackers. I got what you meant, man. It's all good. I Shine 101. We need to get them. All right, guys. It has been an hour and 49 minutes. I appreciate y'all so much for tuning in. I got my guy Joseph Vega that just came in with the comments. I'm going to read that one, Joseph. He said the Eagles need to get rid of Gannon. We need a more aggressive defensive approach. We should go all defense this draft, at least first 4 picks, and definitely sign a receiver in safety and free agency. I wouldn't do that just yet, Joseph. I think it's a little too early to be getting rid of Gannon. You got to get him as players first and see where he is. You know what I'm saying? After you see where he is, then I think you kind of got to move on. If you get him as players and this system is still just this bad where dudes are just dumping it off on you. But to be fair, he doesn't have guys in coverage yet in terms of that second level. And that's a big part of what his defense is, to be honest. So, I mean, it's kind of tough to say that right now. But I also don't think Gannon's a long-term solution because I think he's going to get a head coaching job. I absolutely think he's going to get a head coaching job, guys. And I'll read one more, guys, real fast. And he said, if Kelsey retired, we have Seumalo to slide into that spot. He was originally drafted to be his replacement. Anyways, it's very true, Saison. It's exactly what he was drafted for. All right, guys, thank you all so much. We're going to come back. We'll probably do a live stream again tomorrow, guys. I'm going to see how I'm going to format tomorrow. We might do kind of a Q&A type style for tomorrow's, kind of ordeal here, all right? All right, guys, thank you all so much. I appreciate you guys. 9:05 tomorrow morning. I will put a video out tonight as well, guys. I'm going to think about the topic. I think we have a lot to talk about. I don't think it's going to be draft yet. I'm not quite to that point yet. That's probably going to be next week. But I might start laying out videos for contracts. So look for me to kind of break down the Brandon Brooks situation. I'm going to go over the numbers and show you guys the numbers. All right, y'all. If you guys can hit the like button on your way out, I would greatly appreciate it. And I'll see you guys on the next video. Later, y'all.